In this video, we're going to talk about how to calculate the midpoint of a line segment, which means, right, given a Cartesian plane, right, and we're going to draw that Cartesian plane, right, so we have the y-axis again, we have our x-axis, this is our x, right, and you're given 2 points, right, so let's just say you're given this first point and then you're given that second point again, right. Essentially we have, so okay, actually let's just make sure we label these. So this is going to be point 1, which means it has x value x1, y value y1. And then this is point 2, which means it has x value x2, y value y2, right? How do you calculate? So if you have a line connecting these two, which basically is a line segment, because the line is longer, the straight line is longer. The straight lines don't usually end, right? So in this case, if I take the line between point 1 and point 2, what is the midpoint? How do I calculate the coordinates of the midpoint between these two positions? Now, again, we have appreciated before that if we want to go from point A to point B, we can also interpret this as the fact that this graph has moved sideways and horizontally at the same time. So we can treat the midpoint kind of the same way. Essentially, we're saying, okay, if you've moved horizontally, it means to get to the midpoint, we want the halfway point of that horizontal movement, right? So that means if my x movement started from x1 and it finished off at x2, right? Because these are my x values, right? So my x value at this position is x1. And over this position, it's x2. So how do I calculate the middle of these 2 points? In order for me to calculate the middle, essentially, I find the average of these two. So I basically say you add them, so x1 plus x2, and then you divide those by 2. Same thing with the y's, right? With the y's, we again appreciate the fact that in order for us to go from this y value to that y value, we're moving vertically, right? So let's just get back to this. So if this is y1 and this is y2, the y position of the midpoint is also, it's basically smack dab in the middle of these 2 points. So how do you find the coordinates, that the coordinate that's just between these 2 points? Essentially, you're going to find the average again. So you say y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So basically, those are the coordinates of your midpoint. Your midpoint has x value. The x value of your midpoint is the average of your 2 x's. And the y value of your midpoint is the average of your y's. And that is basically all you need to know. We could literally just end the video right here. And I would have a short video for once. All right, but we're obviously going to go through a couple of examples. Coordinates of midpoint are basically going to be x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And the y coordinate is the same, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And again, it doesn't really matter which one you start with, which one you finish with, as long as you're adding the 2 x's and you're dividing by 2, then you're completely fine. Be careful about the signs always. All right, so let's jump into a couple of examples, a few examples actually. We're going to go through 3 examples. Example number 1. This is the same as the example from before. We're trying to find the midpoint. I mean, we're using the exact same points as the points that we used in the length of the line video. But essentially, you're going to go from point 1 and 2 up until point 5 and 5, right? Now, we don't really need to draw these on a graph. We're just going to keep on using this formula, right? So for that formula, all we need to do is identify our x's. So we know that this is going to be one of the x's. This is the other x, right? Again, it doesn't really matter which one your x is because you're just adding. 5 plus 1 is the same as 1 plus 5. And then same thing here, we have our y's. And then once we identified those, all we just need to do is put them into the formula. So midpoint is essentially just going to be your x's, which is 1 plus 5, and then you divide it by 2, and then your y's, right, which is going to be 2 plus 5 divided by 2. This is 1 plus 5 is 6 divided by 2, that gives you 3. And then for the y, we have 2 plus 5, which is 7 divided by 2, which is 7 over 2, or 3.5. That is the answer. All right, so it's not too bad, I hope. I hope you think it's not too bad, right? So yeah, that is example number 1. Let's move on to example number 2. Again, we have 2 points, right? The first point is going to be from x is equal to negative 4, y is equal to 2. And then the second point is x is equal to 4 and y is equal to negative 2. Right, the midpoint of this again, right? So midpoint, in order for us to find the midpoint, we just take the average of the x's, which is negative 4 up until 4. So that's going to be negative 4 plus positive 4. Be careful about the signs again. And then over here we have the y's, which are 2 and negative 2. All right. The midpoint, therefore, is 4 plus 4. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Divided by 2, that gives you 0. 2 plus negative 2 is the same as saying 2 minus 2. That's also 0. Divided by 2 also gives you 0. So the midpoint of this is your origin. And let's just go back and see if it makes sense, because sometimes you're going to make mistakes, right? So that's when you are, doing practice whenever. Preferably, you're going to make mistakes before your exam and not on your actual exam. So it's always good to put checks in place that you can do very quickly, just to check your work and then, proceed to the next question. So if I get this answer, I can ask myself, does this actually make sense, right? Let's start, because we said the midpoint for the x coordinate, of your midpoint is 0. Does that make sense? We're saying, okay, this point went from negative 4 up until positive 4. So if you're starting off and you have a small Cartesian plane, which we can draw over here, and say, okay, you start off at negative 4. You move up until you get to positive 4, right? What is the midpoint? The midpoint you can see here is actually 0, because you move 4 units this side, and then you're also going to move another 4 units this side. The halfway point of that is the first 4 units, which you reach once you get to that y-axis. So this for me makes sense. Same thing with these, right? So if you go from positive 2 all the way up down to negative 2, so you've moved down 2 and you also move down another 2, halfway point is going to be at 0. So those two make sense. Let's just do that for this one as well. If I go from positive 1 up until positive 5, to go from here to here, so this is 1 to 5, to go from there to there, I move 4 times. So what's halfway of 4 times? It's twice. So if I move twice, it means I've gone 1. From 1, I go to 2, and then, so that's going to be 3. So the halfway point should be 3. So the midpoint question, the good thing about midpoint, so you can actually work it out in your head, right, without using the formula, right? Same thing with the 2 to 5. From 2 to 5, right, so if I'm going from 2 up until 5, right, this is moving 3 times, right? What is the halfway point of 3? It's 1.5. So it means if I move 1.5 times, I've reached the halfway point. So what's 1.5 plus 2? It's 3.5, which is that answer. So you can always put these checks just to see if your answer makes sense. All right. But this is with the simpler questions, right? So now let's look at a more tricky question. Example 3. In example 3, right, we have 2 points. Again, you're given 2 points, right? But in this case, you don't actually know what the values of the coordinates, like the x and y values are. You have unknown values. So we're going to have negative a. So this is your first point, right? So the x coordinate of that first point is negative a. The y is 2 plus b, right? And then your second point is 2 plus b plus 4. That's your x coordinate of this point. And then the y coordinate is negative x minus 1, right? So you're given these 2 points, but you're also given the fact that the midpoint in this case is a plus 2b, and then the y value is just b. Right. So now how do you calculate, the question is asking you to find a and b. Okay, now how do you find a and b? Right, so what we do is we go back to the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, okay, we're given midpoint. What's the equation for calculating midpoint? And just to take us back to the examples that we're doing, right? So when we're doing these, in order for us to calculate this and to calculate that as well, we were working out the midpoints for x separately to y. So we were saying in order for us to calculate x, we'd do this. And then separately, in order for us to calculate y, we can, use the y values to calculate the y coordinate of the midpoint. So that means we can treat the x and the y separately as well. So let's start off with the x. Okay, for the x coordinate of the midpoint, we say that in order for us to calculate that, it's x1 plus x2 divided by 2. That would give you the midpoint. So what's the x1 in this case? Your x1 is going to be this first point over here. This is your x1. This point over here is your x2, because those are the x coordinates of your two separate points, right? So we're going to take each of those and we're going to add them. So your x1 is negative a. Your x2 is 2 plus 2b plus 4. We're going to put this in a bracket just to say, okay, we're adding the whole thing. Usually if the whole expression comes as 1, put them in brackets, even though the brackets sometimes might not matter. Just getting into the habit of doing this will lessen your mistakes, because if there's a negative and the negative has to multiply into the whole expression, it eliminates mistakes when you get to those cases. So all right, so you add the 2 and then you divide by 2. This would give you the midpoint of your x. The x coordinate of your midpoint, which is this point over here, right? So doing this should give you a plus 2b. All right, now we're going to simplify our expression. So in order for us to simplify the expression, we're going to multiply both sides by 2 because we don't like denominators. All right, but now you have to multiply this side by 2 as well. All right, so that would mean on the left-hand side, we have negative a plus 2b plus 4. That's equal to, so the 2 also multiplies by the entire bracket. So that's going to be 2 times a, which is 2a, plus 2 times 2b, which is 4b. All right, and then we simplify. All right, so I'm going to leave the 4 on this side. I'm going to put everything else on the other side. So that means when this negative a goes to that side, it becomes positive a. So we have 2a plus a. Same thing when this 2b goes to the other side, it becomes negative 2b. So that means we have positive 4b minus 2b. Okay, that's 4. And then we have 3a plus 4b minus 2b gives you 2b. Okay, perfect. So that was the x coordinate of the midpoint. The y coordinate can be treated exactly the same, right? Because your y coordinate of your midpoint, in order for us to find that, we say y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So which one is our y1? Which one is our y2? This is our y1. This is our y2, right? We add these two, we divide by 2 as, is said by this formula. And the answer would give us the y coordinate of the midpoint, which is b. So let's write that down, right? So that's going to be, what's your y? 2 plus b. So 2 plus b plus, so that's your y1, right? So what's your y2? Your y2 is negative x minus 1. Okay. If you add these two and you divide by 2, you should get the y coordinate of your midpoint, which is b. Why did I say negative x here? My apologies. This is not supposed to be x. This is supposed to be a. All right, are there any other x's here? No, only this one. Okay, negative a. Okay, so now we're going to multiply both sides by 2, same thing that we did before, to cancel out the denominator here, but then it needs to then be done on the right hand side as well. So to simplify, that's going to be 2 plus b. This positive, when it multiplies, it just becomes negative. So these are just going to be minus a minus 1. That's equal to 2b. Right? So to simplify, we can group our like terms. So this can be grouped with that because they're both numbers. 2 minus 1 gives us 1, right? On this side, I can take this b to that side, it becomes negative. So I still have the minus a, that's equal to 2b minus b. Right, so I have 1 minus a is equal to b. So, okay, I think this is fine. This should be fine. Okay, so I have two expressions. I've got two equations and two unknown values, right? So this equation has an unknown a and unknown b. This equation also has an unknown a and unknown b. Two equations, two unknowns, that's a simultaneous equation. So we're going to write down our two equations. The first one was 4 is equal to 3a plus 2b. The second equation was 1 minus a, or let me just write it as b is equal to 1 minus a. So I'm going to use substitution. All right, substitution, which means I can take this b expression, put it in place of that, right? So instead of having 4 is equal to 3a plus 2b, because it's 2 multiplied by b, now we're going to replace b with this expression because b is equal to this, right? So b is equal to 1 minus a. So we're going to simplify the expression. 4 is equal to 3a plus 2 times 1 gives you 2. 2 times negative a gives you negative 2a. Okay? Simplify. Take the group the like terms, which means that 2 is going to go to the left-hand side and it's going to become 4 minus 2. And then we have 3a minus 2a. 3a minus 2a gives you a. 4 minus 2 gives you 2. Therefore, your a is equal to 2. Perfect. Right? And then we're going to come back and say, okay, but remember our b was equal to 1 minus a. So if b was equal to 1 minus a, that means b is equal to 1 minus 2. So 1 minus 2 gives you negative 1. Perfect. Okay, that is how you can use midpoints in a bit more of a complex problem. But it can obviously get a little bit more complex than that, especially once we introduce circles and all of that stuff. It starts to get a little bit fun. But for now, I hope what we've done so far makes sense, and I'll see you in the next video.